freedom. It looks like authenticity. It's not about, trying to get away from the rules. It's just about being true to myself and discovering who I am for the first time. I feel like I'm finally growing up and discovering who I am and becoming the person that I want to be.
Welcome back to Life Happens and Then You Die, a podcast about life, growth, relationships, identity, and figuring things out as we go, sprinkled in with some chaos from our hosts, myself, Jessica, and Melissa. And today we're continuing our conversation with Melissa about her experience with religious deconstruction. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, I highly recommend going back and starting there. We covered Melissa's experience growing up in the Mormon church, the culture surrounding faith, family, marriage, and many of the beliefs that shaped her early life. This episode will make a lot more sense with that context. For those of you joining us from part 1, we're going to jump right back into the conversation where we left off. When deconstruction first began for you, what was the first crack in the foundation? Was there a particular question or realization that started the process?
So my deconstruction kind of started with COVID. We weren't going to church weekly anymore because of social distancing. I think they started doing like online, and I don't even know if we really did that. I don't remember. But also, this was the time when I downloaded TikTok. And I don't want people to come in here and be like, you left the church because of TikTok. No, it just kind of like awakened me because suddenly now I'm seeing all these other perspectives that I'm like, oh, I relate to that. So the first couple things that I would start seeing from ex-Mormon TikTok was about Joseph Smith and polygamy. And I knew all about Joseph Smith and polygamy. I knew that he had many wives, including young girls and older women. And I started learning more about polygamy, and I started doing research about like when things happened and the timing of things. And I always had a problem with polygamy even when I was a kid, and it was always on my shelf. And so now it's just at the forefront. I'm not going to church because of COVID, and I'm seeing these videos and I'm like, I'm an adult now and I have more critical thinking skills, and I'm like just trying to figure out like, how do I really feel about this? Like, how do I really feel about polygamy and this man who claims he saw God and all the wives that he had? And I'm like, I don't feel good about that.
That makes sense. A lot of major life changes don't happen all at once. They start with one question, then another, and before you know it, you're looking at things completely differently. Once that first doubt showed up, did it start leading to other questions pretty quickly, or was it more of a slow unravel over time?
Oh, it snowballed for sure. I mean, it snowballed slowly because, like I said, it took like a year. But as I was learning more, I just, it's funny because a few years before that, I had heard of the CES letter. The CES letter is basically all of these referenced information about early church history that is available. You can get it online, and it just teaches you things that the church doesn't teach you. And I remember reading through some of it at one point because I was like, I just want to see what's in it, and thinking, oh, this is stupid. This sounds made up. Like, this is stupid, and like, who cares? And I also kind of before this was at a point in my life where I was like, you know what? I don't know if the church is true, but it makes me happy, so I'll stay. I was already at that point. So now we've got like, oh, well, maybe we should think about this some more. You start kind of like getting more information that you didn't have, that you weren't taught. And that's kind of where it snowballs. For I feel like a person who is strong in their faith, they could see the same TikTok video and it won't faze them. But because I was already in this point where, well, I don't really know if it's true, and I don't really care because right now I'm just happy. Now I'm in a vulnerable place where if I start getting more information that I don't like, then I'm like, I'm gonna think about this real hard.
When those questions started piling up, did you feel safe bringing them up to other people, or was this mostly just something you explored on your own?
Oh no, I just researched on my own. Yeah, I wasn't gonna ask anybody anything.
Was there a fear behind that, or did you just prefer to do it alone?
um, I guess I probably just didn't think that like it would be brushed off, like, oh, don't, like, because you're told you're not supposed to read things that are anti-Mormon, like you're not supposed to read anti-Mormon literature. And I was reading and studying basically anti-Mormon, but anti-Mormon meaning just factual things.
I've always found it interesting when a belief system discourages certain questions or sources of information. It makes me wonder what the underlying message is. Was it that the information itself couldn't withstand scrutiny? Was it that asking some of those questions was seen as a spiritual risk? Or was there an implied consequence where the fear wasn't necessarily of the information, but of what it might lead you to think, feel, or ultimately believe?
I don't think there were consequences. It was just heavily like, oh, we only read faith promoting materials. And I think it might even be somewhat of a temple recommend question. I don't think it's like directly that, but one of the temple recommend questions in order to attend the temple basically is that you don't follow people who are not of the, like, you don't follow people who are anti the religion, or you know, that sort of, you don't associate with those kind of people, that sort of thing.
What I'm curious about is the emotional side of it. As you were doing that research and looking into things you had been taught not to look into, did you ever feel guilty, like you were doing something wrong simply by asking the questions?
No. No, but I did try to, because I was like, I have free will, I'm gonna do what I want. But I did try to be courteous of my husband, mostly because when I would be watching ex Mormon TikTok, like, it was like, I have a few creators that I really liked, and I would watch their stuff. And Paul would be sitting next to me, and he'd start being like that, like defending the religion. And I'm like, man, I am just watching this video, okay? Let me just watch it and process it. Stop like interrupting and uh, like bashing the creator, okay? Just stop. So it took him like a while. Like, I think because it took me like a year, and he didn't start deconstructing until after I had finished, basically.
One thing I appreciate hearing in your story is that even though you and your husband weren't processing everything at the same pace, there seemed to be a lot of effort to give each other room to work through it. There sounds like there were some conversations and maybe minor disagreements and different perspectives, but also a recognition that this wasn't something either of you could force the other person through. And one thing I think people don't always talk about with major life changes is the cost.
Oh.
When you went through this process, what did it cost you? Whether that was community, identity, relationships, certainty, or something else entirely. Was there anything you felt like you lost along the way?
I honestly feel like it didn't cost me anything, really. My parents at that point had pretty much already left. I think they kind of paved the way for me because I feel like I could sense that they had stepped away, and I could see it. I knew they weren't going to church and all these things. And so that kind of gave me some permission. Like, oh, well, I'm not disappointing anybody by doing this. So that helped a lot. On the other end of things, we are very careful about what we do and say around Paul's mom. She is still very, very much a member of the church, and it's just a very sensitive topic for her.
So, after deconstructing and stepping away from the church, did you feel like your place in the community changed at all? Were there any shifts in how people interacted with you or viewed you?
Mm-mm. Surprisingly, no. I have run into ward members, and they're super nice when you run into them. And I'm like, oh, it's so nice to see, like, because it's nothing against the people, like, and it's nice to see people every once in a while. But yeah, no, I don't feel like I get treated any differently. But I mean, I'm not going to church anymore, and I didn't really give anybody an explanation as to why, and so they don't ask questions.
If someone from the church sat down with you today and asked you why you left, what do you think that conversation would look like?
If it was a member that I used to know, I would probably just let them know, like, hey, like, this is not something I want to talk about with you. Um, yeah, I mean, I would have to be pretty close to them to feel like I could talk to them about it, just because I'm not here to, like, I don't know, throw ideas into your head of, like, this is what's I believe, so that's what you should believe, and you should leave too. Like, I'm not trying to, like, help anybody deconstruct unless that's what they want. You know what I mean? I don't want to, like, uh, lead anyone any direction at all. Your journey, not gonna touch it.
Was there ever any anger during the process? Not necessarily towards a person, but towards the experience itself? Looking back, were there things you felt like you missed out on because of the beliefs you were raised with, or was it more of an acceptance process?
I think one thing with this super superficial is just feeling like I missed out on cute clothes that I could have worn. Like, oh my gosh, let me just be a kid and wear cute clothes, be a teenager and look nice. Like, I had to be so frumpy and stupid, and now I'm fat and I can't even look cute. Like, come on. Like, I missed out on my best years. All my best years.
You know what? I appreciate the honesty of that answer. Because when people talk about loss, they often jump straight to big philosophical things, but sometimes it's the small everyday experiences that hit the hardest. The things that seem superficial on the surface, but are really about self expression, identity, and getting to figure out who you are. And for the record, I don't think cute clothes have an age limit. So, when you went through the deconstruction process, was it the church itself that you were stepping away from, or did it change how you viewed religion as a whole? Or, in other words, did you deconstruct from Mormonism specifically, from organized religion more broadly, or from faith altogether?
The only thing that I hold on to is the hope that I that there is a next life, that there is a heaven, and that I'll see my son again. That is the only thing. And even I know that that's, who knows, and I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay. Like, if it's not the case, that's okay. And that's why I feel like it's so important to just enjoy every little thing in your life, even the small, tiny things. So, yeah,
Did you ever explore any other kind of beliefs or faith?
no, no. When I deconstructed, I was like, nope, I'm done. At that point, I kind of came to a personal realization or decision that no religion was going to be for me, no denomination was going to be for me, no organized religion was going to be for me, because um it should be personal. It should always be personal. Even if you're going to have it, it should always be personal. It's never about anybody else, and organized religion makes it about everybody else. I almost feel even that, ironically, the religion, I felt like I was just raised to follow rules and not necessarily follow Christ. It wasn't, it was never, I never felt like it was really truly about Christ. It was just about doing what you're supposed to do. And you know what? Christ never said we couldn't drink coffee. Not that I drink it, because I don't even like it. Okay? You guys aren't even following the teachings of Christ. Oh my gosh.
One thing I've noticed, not just with religion, but with people in general, is that we're often very selective about which parts we give weight to. We can treat
Hmm.
one piece as unquestionable truth while explaining away, ignoring, or never really examining another piece that points in a
Yeah.
different direction.
I mean, my all my biggest things on my shelf are church history things that basically just don't add up. Like the history doesn't add up to the type of God I believe in. It doesn't add up to the type of humanity that I believe in. And essentially, when it comes down to it, and I know you didn't ask this question yet, but the ultimate reason why I left was because I feel like the founder of the church, Joseph Smith, I feel like he was a complete fraud. And if you feel like he is a fraud and that he lied and that he made all of this up, then all of it is not real.
I keep coming back to this idea that human beings are fallible. None of us are perfect. We misunderstand things, we misremember things, we bring our own biases and perspectives into the way we interpret the world. That's part of why I've always found conversations about truth so fascinating. People often use truth and fact as if they're the same thing, but I'm not sure that they always are. I've had conversations with people who were completely convinced that certain stories or events were historical fact, while others viewed those same things through a lens of faith. And it always leaves me with the same question: how do we decide what we believe is true? Because at some point, we're all weighing evidence, experience, trust, authority, and our own interpretation of events. And I can see how once you start questioning the foundation of something, it naturally leads you to examine everything that was built on top of it.
Yeah, and actually, there was a prophet, basically the leader of the church at one point, who has since passed away. I think it was President Hinckley, I think, said, and it could be someone else, that if something along the lines that if Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon aren't true, then all of it's not true. So, like, he said that in like a view of like, well, I believe that it's true, and so it is all true. But also, I think, I don't know, like maybe I need to read the context of the quote more. But I'm like, that's exactly right. If the if the foundation is not true, then none of it's true. If you believe Joseph Smith was a con man, then it's it's not true.
So, for all the things that changed for you, is there anything you find yourself missing from that chapter of your life?
Miss from the church? I I don't think so. I honestly don't miss having all these weekly obligations that took me away from my family. And yet they say family is so important, and then I was multiple times a week going to church activities that I want to just be home with my husband. I don't miss that. I don't miss that at all. I don't think there's a single thing that I miss.
I think that's pretty telling in its own way. So, what does freedom look like for you now?
Freedom. It looks like authenticity. It's not about, trying to get away from the rules. It's just about being true to myself and discovering who I am for the first time. I feel like I'm finally growing up and discovering who I am, and becoming the person that I want to be instead of the person that I was molded to be. And it's really, I think what people don't realize is it's really not that different from what I was. It's just, like I said, more authentic and more real. And I'm still me. I just, I think there's this perspective, especially when you're in the church. You're kind of taught to look at ex members a certain way, that they've lost their way and they just wanted to sin, or all these different, there's different perspectives of why someone would leave the church. And I don't think people realize how leaving the church isn't an easy process for most people. That's why we call it deconstructing, right? Like it's a process. It's not something that just happens overnight. It's something that takes a lot of time, a lot of study, a lot of heartfelt moments, a lot of thoughts. And yeah, it's not it's not what people in Sunday school make you think it is. That it's just like, if you love them, they will come back. And, if, I don't know. It's, I just feel like there's this whole world out there, and I'm just now discovering it. And it's like, how could I ever go back? How could I reject science and all of these things that I'm learning, and acceptance and love for other human beings that, you know, just, it's crazy to me. I don't know. Family is so important, and yet we reject our own family when they don't meet the standards. Like, what do you think God would really do that? Like, you are doing it. Would God do that? Would Christ do that? Yeah.
I've never been a particularly religious person myself, so my perspective has always been a little different. A lot of what guides me comes from values like integrity,
Mm-hmm.
compassion, personal
Yeah.
responsibility, and treating people the way I want to be treated. And I try to approach conversations like this with the understanding that most belief systems exist because people are searching for meaning, community, purpose, and a way to navigate life. What I really appreciate about your story
Yeah.
isn't whether someone agrees or disagrees with your conclusions, it's that you were willing to ask difficult questions and follow them wherever they led. And from everything you've shared today, it sounds like that process helped you become more authentic to yourself and more intentional about what makes life meaningful for you. I think there's something really beautiful about that. And I know you've done a lot of journaling throughout the process. You talked about having a shelf. Is there anything you'd like to share with us about that?
Just kind of like just notes. Um, but I have a lot of things, and I kind of I wrote them down at the time because I wanted a reminder. I wanted a list. I wanted to be able to, like, if somebody asked me like why, that it wouldn't feel like because of TikTok, or because of this thing I read online, that it was like real concerns. Because I feel like I'm not the best person to speak my mind just at on the fly. I uh often feel I'm more better spoken when I've written something down and processed it that way, and then can go from there. So I can read you all of it if you want. So, and it's not in any particular order. So I have tithing. So members will pay 10% of their tithing to the church. It is a temple standard that if you want to enter the temple, you pay your tithing. It's something that you are encouraged to pay your tithing even when you don't have the money, even when it means that you can't feed your family, which is crazy. Um, so I have here that tithing later became a temple worthiness question where it was not before. And there was also, I don't remember who said it, but they had claimed when they started putting tithing in the worthiness question that tithing wouldn't be permanent, that tithing would just be something that we do until the church gets on its feet, and we won't always be paying tithing, but we have ever since. And the church is a $1 billion organization. All of my tithing money probably went into stock funds, money that I could have used to feed myself as a young married woman, and I was giving that to the church, and I was going to the government for help. So I would pay roughly $300 in tithing, and then I was getting $300 from the government to pay for food on food stamps.
I didn't plan on bringing this up, but I want to add a little context before I ask this next question. My experience with the church was very different from yours. I wasn't raised in it. My mom married into a family that was Mormon, and I was invited to be baptized. I remember being taken into a room beforehand, and the only question that was asked was what was 10% of a dollar. And then I was told that's what I would give back to the church. And as a kid, I didn't really understand why that mattered or what it meant. I was so nervous, I wanted to do the right thing, and I just went along with it because I didn't want to disappoint any of the new family members. And looking back, what stands out to me is how little I understand about the commitment I was making. You, on the other hand, grew up in the church and had a lot more context than I did. So, when you were preparing for baptism, what kinds of conversations or questions do you remember having?
That's insane. Because when you're 8 and you get baptized, the questions they're supposed to ask are, do you believe in Christ? Do you believe in God? Do you like and like do you want to be a member of this church? And like those are the questions. Not do you know what 10% of a dollar is? That's insane. And that right there is also a really good point, because this all religions are being taught by humans, and every human is different. And so what happened to Jessica right there should never have happened. And but it did. And it completely ruins experiences for people. Like, that's why some people are so devout and they're so lovely people and they love the church, and other people will come away completely scarred. I feel like I just came away fine. Nothing too crazy, nothing too scarring, except for probably my trauma with, infertility and all of that and how I felt about that. But the experiences are so different. So I don't want someone to come in here, listen to this podcast and go, well, her experience is like, she doesn't know what she's talking about and she's stupid. Your experience is not the same as mine. I never said that it was. I'm just sharing my experience. Take that with what you will. The next one is about polygamy, because polygamy was a big shelf breaker. So I put polygamy and gaslighting. So they say that polygamy is for bringing up seed, but then they also say that polygamy was just to seal families, sealing only. So there's like two different reasons. Neither of them make sense, because if you say it's for sealing only, the sealing ceremony and covenant came after the practice of polygamy. So you can't say that polygamy was only practiced to seal families together when that wasn't happening until later. And then also, if you're saying it's for bringing up the seed, well, then why are you telling people now in modern times that Joseph Smith did not have sex with his wives and that it was just for the sealing, and like he's not having sex with 14-year-olds? And all these things, like there's just too many excuses, too many contradicting, this is what happened, this is what happened, this is what happened. I don't really care what happened. What happened, regardless of your excuse, was wrong. Like, I always believe that polygamy was not of God, and that it was a mistake, and that church leaders should have just said, this was not of God, this was a mistake, and we don't practice it anymore. But they've never done that. They've always said, well, we have to abide by the laws of the land, and God will have polygamy in the next life. No. 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 And I remember asking my husband several times, like, if I die, like, or I would ask him, if we get to heaven and God tells you have to take another wife, are you going to do it? And he was like, no. I was like, no. And I was like, good. That's the right answer. Because if you said yes, I'm like, I'm out of here. I would have nightmares, literal nightmares, where I would wake up and I would be mad at my husband because I was like, you married someone else in my dream. You had 2 wives. How fucking dare you? And I'd be mad at him the whole day for something that I dreamt. So nightmares.
I can see why that would be difficult to reconcile. It's one thing for a church to say, we don't practice this anymore. It's another thing entirely to ask someone to accept that the principle itself is still valid, just reserved for a different time or place. Especially when we're talking about something as personal as marriage. That's not an abstract theological concept. That's your relationship, your future, and the life that you're building with someone.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much more. Okay, priesthood power. Power is something that's given to young men in the church that basically gives them power to give blessings and preside in different ways. And blacks and women were not allowed to have the priesthood, but I actually I don't have full notes here. I just have, that's the only note says priesthood power, black and women. If I remember correctly, black and women used to have priesthood power and then they didn't, and now black men do, but still women don't. And a lot of what people will say is that a 12-year-old boy in the church has more power than a woman. Yeah. Because he has priesthood power laid upon him. So the next one I have written down is Book of Abraham. Basically, Joseph Smith was like, hey, look, we found this new book on top of the Book of Mormon. Like, we found the Book of Mormon, now we found the Book of Abraham. And he tried to translate it, and he translated it wrong because it was an actual book and it was Egyptian. And he translated it wrong because he doesn't have the power of translation. Like, scientists have translated this, and it's not what he said it said. And it's still in the Book of Mormon. It's in there. Yeah, it's part of the Book of Mormon. Gods and goddesses. This one was kind of like a modern thing. So when I was younger in the church, we were taught that we would all be gods and goddesses and have our own planets. And now, in the modern age, this has been removed from the church website. And they claim that this was never a thing. And they basically have erased it. And so the people who remember being taught it are the people who know that it's not a thing anymore.
Listening to those examples, whether it's the Book of Abraham, teachings about gods and goddesses, priesthood restrictions, or other historical questions, what stands out to me is the tension between preserving certainty and preserving trust. From a psychological standpoint, it's interesting because when people or organizations encounter information that creates discomfort or contradiction, there's often a temptation to explain it away, minimize it, or avoid it altogether in order to maintain a consistent narrative. But the paradox is that the very act of trying to eliminate the disconnect can create a different kind of disconnect, not between the person and the doctrine, but between the person and the institution itself. Because trust isn't built on never being wrong, it's built on being able to acknowledge complexity, mistakes, changes, and uncertainty when they exist.
Yes, but then also I have this side note because things also mean additional things, right? So the whole goddess and goddesses, I was taught that I would be a goddess and I would rule over planets. Okay? But then if you take that on a whole different direction, this teaching essentially disproves that they are Christians. Because Christians only believe in one God, one deity. And this is claiming that there are multiple deities. So there's basically, from what I've heard, some of this is research and other things is just what I've heard online. And Joseph Smith basically at the time just took whatever he wanted from other religions and just slapped it together. Next we have temple ordinances were stolen from the Masons. Basically, everything we do in the temple is catered to or replicated from a masonry ceremony. So Joseph Smith was a Mason or rejected from the Masons or something. They kicked him out, and he stole their ordinances and put it into our temple ordinances.
You know, I've heard the word cult thrown around a lot over the years, and it's one of those words I try to be careful with because it's so emotionally charged. I haven't done enough research to have a strong opinion one way or the other. What does interest me is the psychology behind it. The idea that a group might discourage outside information, alternative perspectives, or certain questions, because the more I learn about human behavior, the more it seems like information control is one of the most powerful ways to shape how people see the world.
That's why they tell you not to read anything, because if you read the actual church history, it all falls apart. There's nothing wrong with the doctrine of families can be together and all these beautiful things, but the foundation of it is wrong. And when you have a church that's telling you you can only get into heaven when you pay 10% of your income, and you can, you have to do all of these things, and we want you to bear as many freaking children as you can, and it's not okay. I have so much more. We're not even halfway done through the first page. So next I have Drunk Kirtland Temple. So basically what I had read was that at the time of the Kirtland Temple, when it was dedicated, the saints were drunk at the celebration, and Mormons are not supposed to drink. Uh, the word of wisdom, this is probably on here later on too. Oh yeah, here we go. The word of wisdom, not followed, later became temple worthiness question. Joseph Smith didn't follow the word of wisdom. None of the saints followed the word of wisdom. Why do we have the word of wisdom? And we follow it to a T in the modern age. And if you don't follow it, you can't go to the temple. So if you drink coffee, because that's the modern interpretation of one of the rules in there, then you can't go to the temple. Theoretically, there are people who say, well, I drink coffee and I still go to the temple. And it's like, then you get into the human part of it all over again, because some bishops are like, oh, it's fine, you can go, we want you there, it's good for you to be at the temple. And others will be like, no, you drank coffee last week, you cannot go.
And that's where the human element starts to get really interesting. You can have a written rule, but at the end of the day, people are still the ones interpreting and enforcing it. So two people can have the same exact behavior, go to two different bishops, and potentially have two completely different experiences. And then it raises the question of whether the standard is the rule itself or the person applying it.
Yes. Yes. And I think they also kind of make you feel like the bishop will know if you're lying. He doesn't know. Are you kidding me? Um, I have the word garments, just the word garments. Oh, I think garments is because the garments have changed over time. They used to be long sleeve and all the way down to the ankle. And even today, in modern times, the most recent change was like last year. And now there's not a sleeve. It goes to like here. So you can wear sleeveless tops. Not tank tops, though, because I'm pretty sure it probably still is thick, like here. It's not going to be like a tiny strap. It, yeah. I'm like, dang it. Like, and I got extra piercings, and that's okay too now. I don't know. Some people claim you can even get tattoos now, and I'm like, because it doesn't explicitly say not to anymore, but it's like, yeah.
See, and that's where I start getting lost, because if standards around garments, tattoos, piercings, dress, and even interpretation of the word of wisdom can change over time, how does someone determine which teachings are permanent and which ones are products of a particular time, culture, or leadership?
The next one I have is secret handshakes and secret combinations. So in the temple, you are taught secret handshakes or sacred handshakes that are required to perform in order to be passed through the veil into heaven. And I find it completely ironic because in the Book of Mormon, we are told that secret combinations are of the devil and all these things. And it's like, isn't that what you're doing in the temple? Like, guys, it just feels a little ironic, a little bit crazy. Confirmation bias. I learned about confirmation bias when I was trying to learn about, well, why do I feel like the Spirit and the Holy Ghost and all of these things? Because it's a scientific phenomena called confirmation bias. And they pass it off as this is the Spirit that's telling you all these wonderful things. Because I would be like, well, I feel the Spirit when I go for a hike or when I'm at a baseball game and everybody's singing together. Like, that's not a spiritual thing, but you feel it because you're actually feeling confirmation bias. Because you have that feeling. Yeah, I think there's also one other word for it too. There's two different, the confirmation bias and something else. So
Oh, I am going on a tangent with this one because I find this to be the most fascinating topic. It's fascinating to me because the feeling itself is real. People do feel something powerful in these moments. The question is what we're taught to call that feeling. Confirmation bias is part of that because our brains naturally look for and interpret information in ways that support what we already believe. So if you're taught this warm, emotional, peaceful feeling means the Holy Ghost is confirming truth, then every time you feel that sensation, you may interpret it through that lens. But psychology also gives us other language for those experiences. Awe is one piece. The feeling of being overwhelmed by something bigger than yourself, like nature, music, a crowd, or a deeply emotional moment. And then there's collective effervescence, which is that shared emotional energy people feel in groups, like at church, a concert, a stadium, or any place where people are united in the same emotion. So to me, the fascinating part isn't dismissing the experience. It's asking, is the feeling proof of one specific belief? Or is it a very human emotional response that we learn to interpret through that belief system we're in? Okay, tangent over. What is on your list next?
Control of sources for info. We kind of talked about that. You're not supposed to read anti-Mormon literature and things that only faith promoting, which is a signal of a cult. That is one of the signs of a cult, is that they control the media and the things that you consume. Translation versus revelation. I don't remember why I put that one on here. I think there was just discrepancies between when something they would claim is translated versus if it was a revelation from God. Golden plates. I put rock and hat because when I was growing up in the church, I was not taught that Joseph Smith put a rock, what he called a seer stone, in a hat so it was dark, and that's how he translated. That's not how you translate things, okay? Translation, that's completely not the definition of translation, okay? That's how he translated the Book of Mormon. Literally can't use the word translation because that's literally not the definition of translation, but that's what they use, and that's probably why I put translation versus revelation. Because he claimed that he would see the words in his mind, and I'm like, that's not how translation works. That's not how you translate things. And people will be like, oh, well, the power of God. No, that's not. We have science. We have science, people. Let's see. The first vision. So the first vision is what Joseph Smith claimed to see God, and that God basically told him to start the church. The first vision, there are 4 plus accounts, different accounts of the first vision. They are all different. And the first one was written 14 years later. And he claimed to have been like 14 years old when it happened. And 14 years later is when he actually wrote it down. And there were a lot of churches coming up at that time. It was a big renaissance of churches, basically, in the area he was in. Also, I can't remember where this was written. It's in the Book of Mormon, in like one of the appendices or something. It says that it is a spiritual account. It's not the Book of Mormon is not a historical account. It's a spiritual account. Basically, it didn't happen. So it says that somewhere. I put in quote, more spiritual than historical. I don't remember where. You guys will have to look it up, but there is reference to that within church doctrine that it is a spiritual account. Changes in doctrine, not the same today, yesterday, and tomorrow, even though they say that the church is the same today, yesterday, and tomorrow. That's just clearly based on history of the church. That's not true. Oh, yeah. Okay, so when I was talking about the endowment, so the temple stuff, no recorded revelation and not written down until 35 years later. So the endowment started happening, and then 35 years later is when it was revealed. Like, I'm like, you guys, the math isn't mathing. Why? It doesn't make sense. Oh, I put this one down when they were kind of changing things up in the modern age. Caffeine is no longer referenced as part of the word of wisdom, but in the early 2000s and the 90s, we were told that caffeine was against the word of wisdom and we weren't allowed to drink soda with caffeine. And we are now in a phase where people are constantly drinking caffeine in the form of energy drinks, but they still refuse to drink coffee because they think that it's bad for them. Yeah, coffee is not bad compared to energy drink. Wine was used in the sacrament for 70 years after the word of wisdom came out, and we weren't supposed to be drinking wine. They were still using wine for 70 years after that. Tithing, I put how the funds are used. The tithing was implemented due to church debt. I kind of said that before. Also, something that we were taught is that there is no paid clergy. None of the I believe that even the prophet wasn't paid. The prophet is paid. He has a living stipend, and it's large, and that's payment. That is payment for what you're doing. A living stipend. That's the same as a payment. I mean, when the church comes at you with technicalities of like, well, you got your tax return, you need to pay your tithing on your tax return. How is that any different than you're paying them a stipend and like that's getting paid? Like, billion-dollar corporation. They have stocks, hotels, malls, all under their name. Tons of real estate under their name. The other thing, this was from the CES letter. Joseph Smith was a treasure digger, is what they called it back in the day. And he was using the seer stone, the same seer stone that he claimed to translate the Book of Mormon with. He used that to con people. That's the first records of Joseph Smith, was that people, that he was conning people. Him and his family were conning people in the area that he lived in, claiming that he could find treasure for people with a seer stone. And then, yeah. We were taught in Sunday school that Joseph Smith was tarred and feathered because he was a martyr, because he was Mormon, because he was standing up for his faith. Joseph Smith was tarred and feathered because he sexually pursued young teenage girls in the community, and their parents were mad. Okay. Which also, I don't remember if I wrote this down here. The reason Joseph Smith was in jail where he died wasn't because he was a martyr, which is what we were taught. We were taught he was a martyr. They attacked him. They put him in jail. They killed him. It was because he set fire to a printing press that was going to publish things about him. And there are a lot of people who will defend every single one of these things and be like, that's not true, and all these things. I'm sorry, but like, there's just too much to, I mean, when there's like one thing and it's like, oh, maybe that was made up, but there's so much stuff. I just would rather take my chances. Okay. Like, if I'm going to hell because I don't believe in this terrible guy, okay, I'll live with that. I wrote down racist, bigot, and sexist. That's just all the things that the church kind of represents in a lot of ways to me. There's 3 degrees of heaven. I don't feel like God would do that. Like, why would there be 3 degrees of heaven, which is 1 degree of heaven, and 3 degrees of too bad, you didn't do a good job, and now you're basically in hell. So, View of the Hebrews. Oh, View of the Hebrews is a book, I believe, that was written around the same time as the Book of Mormon, and there's a lot of similarities between the two. So they think maybe he plagiarized from the View of the Hebrews. I'm almost done. I've got 2 more. Then I've got the childless shame. So women's worth and my belonging was based off of whether or not I had children. And then the final thing I have on here is race and the scriptures, because, and this has since been removed from the scriptures, I believe, but I mean, you can find older scriptures that still have this, that basically, in the Book of Mormon, it says that, the Lamanites, their skin was turned dark, because of sin. And that also, I think at one point they became pure and their skin became light.
So when I was putting questions together for this interview, I came across some information that I kind of wanted to share. From what I found, in 2019, there was a whistleblower complaint involving Ensign Peak Advisors, which is the investment arm that manages church funds, alleging that the church had accumulated tens of billions of dollars in investments and reserves. Then in 2023, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission announced a settlement with the LDS Church and Ensign Peak Advisors, stating that shell companies had been used for years to obscure the size of the church's investment portfolio. And regardless of where someone lands on that issue, I think it adds another layer to the larger conversation we've been having about transparency, trust, and institutional accountability.
Yeah, there's literally a mall that they own next to Temple Square. Yeah, they own that mall.
And that's where it starts becoming bigger than just theology. You're talking about an institution, its history, its finances, its culture, and the way it interacts with the world. All of those pieces become part of the conversation. And moving the conversation forward, let's talk about the church's relationship with the LGBTQ community, because that's another area where there have been a lot of conversations and changes over time.
Um, I don't think they've changed. They're just have this facade of being more accepting. Basically, it's okay if that's the case for you. We're not gonna turn you away, but you must not act upon those feelings if you want to be a good standing member of the church. And they're not going to let you go in the temple and get sealed. Like, they're not going to let you get married. You're basically doomed to be single and unhappy your whole life, which I think is just terrible. Just absolutely terrible. And they have done so many things that have impacted families who have spouses that were gay and left. Like, I remember a woman in my ward being very concerned that there was a new ordinance that kids could not get baptized, for something about kids not being able to be baptized if one of the parents was gay until they were like 18 or something. And then they changed it because there was a lot of backlash. They're not inclusive of people. And I do wonder in this modern age, because they have made a lot of changes, I do wonder if at some point, maybe like 20, 30 years from now, at some point, there will be young enough people in power, basically, that they will say, like, oh, it's okay for gay people to get married in the temple and all these things. That's fine. Like, I'm not against that, but it's totally opposite everything I've been like essentially at some point the church is going to have to completely change to survive, because everyone's just going to leave, because society's not going to stay the same. And then you're going to have, and that you just have all these people like following all under like false pretenses.
What I keep coming back to is the human cost of it. Policies, doctrines, and beliefs don't exist in a vacuum. They affect real people and real families. For me personally, I've always struggled with the idea of telling someone they're welcome in a community, but only if they deny a fundamental part of who they are. That's a difficult thing for me to reconcile with. And when those beliefs create tension within families or leave people feeling excluded, rejected, or less worthy than the people around them, that's where my heart goes. Because regardless of where someone stands on the doctrine itself, there are real human beings living with the consequences of those decisions. So when you talk about changes happening in the future, I think about the people who lived through the years before those changes, the families who experienced that friction, the individuals who were asked to choose between belonging and authenticity. That's the part that sticks with me. Okay, before we move on, I just realized there was a follow up question I never asked from the previous episode when we were talking about temple names. Do you feel comfortable sharing yours?
Oh, my name. This is the whole reason we did this episode, was because where did you hear that you brought it up? Like, what made you bring that up the last time?
Yeah, so it actually came up at work. People were talking about temple names, and one of the things that was being discussed was that the names were reused and that everyone who went through on the same day received the same names. I didn't know if that was true or not, but it stuck in my head because it wasn't something I've ever heard before.
Yes, get the same name. Yes. Which I didn't learn until I was deconstructing, that everybody who went through the temple the same day as me got the same name as me, and they just recycled names. And I think all of the names are either scripture based or early pioneer saint based. So are you ready? You want to know what my name is? My spiritual name, I guess you would call it, is Abigail. So if you die before me, you can pretend to be my husband, be like, Abigail, I accept you through the veil or something. I don't know. It's just ridiculous. Like, it's just ridiculous. Some people, I think you were saying, some people even after leaving the church don't like to talk about what their name is, and I'm like, what? That holds no power over me. It's like saving the word Voldemort. Who cares?
I think that's actually a really interesting point because if you've left the belief system entirely, but you still feel afraid to say the name
Yeah,
out loud, then part of that belief may still have some power over you. And that's not necessarily a criticism. I think it just speaks to how deeply some of these ideas get ingrained. We can intellectually move on from something long before we emotionally move on from it. For me, when I hear things like, don't say the name, or don't do this, or something bad will happen, my instinct is usually to test it. Because at some point, I want to know whether I'm acting from my own beliefs or from a fear that was handed to me by someone else. And I think that connects to the bigger question around heaven, hell, and what happens after we die. At
yeah,
what point do we stop making decisions based on fear of being wrong and start making decisions based on what we genuinely believe?
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't really. No, it's fine. I don't really know if I believe in it anymore. So I don't. I don't know. I don't think maybe we won't exist at all. We'll just kind of disappear, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. I don't want to be reincarnated, please. There are people who out there who believe in reincarnation. I don't really want to come back and work a 9 to 5 again. Okay? No, I'll just be done. Thanks. One lifetime's great. I'm out.
I can completely understand that. All right, so before we wrap up, I want to pose one more question for you. Out of everything we've discussed, is there anything you want the audience to take away from it?
I don't know. I guess I just want people to just be themselves. And understand themselves and really reflect on what they believe, and don't be afraid to question what you believe if you have a question about it. There's no shame in wanting to learn more and wanting a better explanation for things. And I life is happy on the other side. I feel like a lot of Mormons are fed this perspective of when you leave the church, you're never going to be happy. You're always, oh, something's always going to be missing. Nothing's missing. Nothing's missing that you aren't already looking for. I have everything I'm looking for. The only time something's missing is if you're looking for something you don't have. Maybe, and I think that's different for everyone. I think some people stay in the church just for the community of it all. There's community other places. You live in a vibrant community wherever you are. There's, I don't know. I think it's just so hard to leave sometimes, and there's a lot of reasons to stay, but uh, don't be afraid to explore what's out there.
This was such a fascinating conversation, and Melissa, thank you for being willing to share your experience so openly. I know topics like this can be deeply personal, and I really appreciate your honesty and vulnerability throughout the discussion.
Yeah.
And thank you to all of you for spending time with us. Whether this episode resonated with you, challenged you, or simply gave you a new perspective to consider, we're grateful you were here with us. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to follow, like, comment, or leave a review. And if you know someone who might find this episode meaningful or connect with Melissa's experience, we'd love for you to share it with them. Your support helps us continue having these conversations and exploring topics that matter to us. Until next time, take care of yourselves, stay curious, and we'll see you next week.
Yay. Thanks for watching. Bye.